Without objection, we're calling this meeting to order. No objections heard. Meeting is called to order. Second agenda item is, of course, to welcome Mr. Silver this evening. Thank you for being here with us.
Happy to be here.
We also thank for our members of the public, both virtual and here in person. Thank you for joining us tonight. Let's see. So Silver, just want to just quickly introduce yourself, let people know.
Sure, Bishop. My name is Wayne Silver. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission. The commission's responsibilities include certifying over 15,500 police officers in the state of Maryland. It fluctuated almost daily. We also certify 20 police academies. Every class that is given to a police officer in Maryland must be certified by the commission. We certify 3,000 instructors. And in addition to that, we're responsible for providing the regulations dealing with the Police Reform Act, as well as training the administrative charging committees and the trial police.
Thank you, Mr. Silver. He'll be presenting to us later tonight. So thank you very much again for coming out through all the rain.
Happy to do it.
So thank you for that. Next action item is to hear a motion on the minutes of January 15th, a motion to approve or anything on a January 15th meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll move to approve them.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
A second?
We have a second. All those in favor of approving January 15th minutes, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Next is a motion to approve tonight's agenda, February 19th, 2026. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the agenda for this evening, February 19th.
I'll second it.
We have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Any nays? The ayes have it. Tonight's agenda is moved and approved. Thank you for that. That will go on record. Next item, action item is board requests. So are there any requests from the members of the board to staff right now? So we can kind of put that in motion and we can continue to move on with tonight's meeting.
I have one.
Board recognizes.
Yeah, one request. I had mentioned it to Forrest earlier, but concerning the training programs around diversity and is that Department that it be looked into for those training to be made available other than standard 8 to 5 business hours for board members, because we have full-time jobs and the hours they're scheduled are quite challenging to participate in.
Yes, thank you. And I actually did have an opportunity to check just now. Within the learner home, the course catalog, when you go into register for a training in your Montgomery County account, if you when you search for one of these, like advancing racial equity, you just search advancing, one of the options will be a self-paced online course. It can be easy to miss because it has a start date that's in the past. It says start date July 1st, 2025. But that's just because it's for the full fiscal year. But any of those you can take at any time at your leisure.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I'd like to add to that also. as far as said, once you go in to your employee learning tab, when you sign up, you can schedule these out and they will send you reminders. So, and of course, it is part of our mandate to have these lessons completed, to be in compliance as members of the board. I think I have a request. I think I've asked it already at another meeting, just a one-on-one with our director. So if I did, we don't have to repeat it. But I was looking for a comparisons of the MCPD's annual report on stops or encounters, traffic stops, and or complaints. Racially divided, and it's bias. I know we've had in our report the numbers, and I wanted to compare those numbers to the MCPD's annual report that was just put out, maybe a few weeks after ours, if not a day or two after our report. So I wanted to see that in comparisons going into our first quarterly meeting.
And is this looking for the IAD report, the statistical data report?
That's a good question for me. I think I can answer it this way. For us, is what would be the comparable comparisons to what we have in our report showing those showing those percentages versus what he actually put in his report. So I don't want to compare, the apples to oranges, but if we can get both oranges showing those reports, I would like to see that to prepare for the first quarterly meeting.
All right, we'll see if we can find it. So we haven't at this point located an agency annual report for them for 2025 just yet. We have seen a report on their how they did issue a report regarding facial recognition data earlier this month. Let's see.
And I recall the reason what brought this to me is because I found a report specifically signed off and presented by the chief.
All right.
But again, I was like, well, let's look deeper into that to see if that was the official or that just something on his website as chief, or I wasn't sure. So
We can check.
members, are there any other requests before we move on from that item? Yes.
Yes, thank you. So we understand that trial board hearings are open to the public, and I think I have some bandwidth to observe and report back. And I was wondering if our team could let us know when one is scheduled and the address and other information regarding attendance.
Yes. So what we can do, so on a monthly basis, while the ad hoc group is preparing its recommendations for how to present information about trial board requests, we're reporting in these monthly meetings any new requests that have been made. When a request is made and when we get notice of when it is scheduled, we can provide that information to the board. We would also provide you a link to the agency's page, because there's no guarantee or necessarily even a reason for them to tell us if the date changes. The staff is not a party to these proceedings. We don't accept service on behalf of trial board members. Any scheduling can potentially happen between the trial board participants and parties themselves. So the most up-to-date information, if it changes, will be on the agency's website, but we can certainly provide the preliminary scheduling.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes special counsel.
Just to add something, Ken, I was looking on, I went to actually the trial board yesterday for the Montgomery County Police Department. It's on their website. It is a deep dig to find it, quite frankly, the way it's listed. And they also have a number on there. It says, to check the day before, or actually they say check that morning to make sure it's still on because it can settle. So just to let you know, that's how I found the information. And it lists the case on their website.
Great. Just a quick comment. Yeah. So send me what you know so far. I'll also do the digging, and of course the fact that this might be hidden might be something we want to recommend fixing as well.
Copy that. Again, what we want to do as members is understand and give a little more than patience, but also an understanding that staff can only provide what's available, and understanding that they can't control, what changes and what shifts. So as long as we go into the request and the understanding of what we get back is what it is, and if we want to go further, there's an example of going to the website themselves of the MCPD, but then again, they can't even control when something is shifted or changed. So just wanted us to kind of remember that as a member, that we want to be understanding and patient with our staff. The board recognizes Ms. Hudson.
Everybody, yeah, and my only question was, are we preparing questions ahead of the quarterly meeting with the chiefs? And if so, just as we've done in the past, I just wanted to see if we're still able to get those questions collated and out to the chiefs. The administrative office has been very good about alerting us and giving us a timeline of when we need to get those questions together on SharePoint for their submission. And also if we are going to be in receipt of questions from the chiefs.
Well, I think what we had decided on in our first meeting on the 15th was to move in a different way this year and not providing questions up front. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so I think we're going to move in that direction. The board has agreed to that. So we're basically just, of course, we can internally create these questions and have them in prep. But as far as sending them out ahead of time, there was really no value or devalue in doing it or not doing it.
Okay.
So we'll move that way. Chuck, did I see your hand or?
Oh, you did. I was just going to add to Alicia's question, but you've answered it. I might suggest that we just review the reports that come out, and perhaps those are questions, since the police chief seemed to think that some of our questions are not in our purview. Those should be questions that we can ask as far as the reports are concerned.
If one thing that our staff has done very thoroughly, if you all and I know we are all busy, we have jobs, but if you double check your emails, Forrest and Laura has been sending out a lot of viewer information, report information, information on pieces of events or documents that has happened, scheduled hearings or bills that are being presented on the state legislative side. So I encourage you to kind of keep digging into your email and catching some of those and reading some of those viewers with very, very helpful documents that they have on it. Before I allow the vice chair to kind of do a sound check and introduce himself, special counsel.
Right, as in reference to Alicia's questions, I know we had talked about this before. I don't mind reviewing the questions because I think that was a prior discussion that you all would collaborate and list your questions and I would review them in reference to the issues that came up before, whether those questions were appropriate or however you all wanted me to review the question.
Yeah, I think we kind of, I don't want to. I think what we want to, I believe, I believe what we want to do now is kind of move on in a way, setting this tone and creating that reciprocal communication based on the new tone that we're setting as a path. Because our first objective is always to fulfill our mandate and to make sure that we're in compliance to what uh, the legislation law says that we're supposed to be doing. I don't want to kind of pick out one thing and make that bigger than what it has to be. But if we control the flow, the tone, and the direction in reference to what we already are taking our stance on, which is we're driving, you know, this painted train because we painted it very well after all this time. And we want to continue to drive it in a way that gives us that flexibility and mobility to reach our destination without kind of going down rabbit holes. Rabbit holes that kind of are not necessarily a timeful thing to kind of go down. So yes, internally we can have our questions and we can look at them, but our questions are our questions.
Right.
Period. They are what they are. It is what it is. So what I want to do is if we can kind of move on from, because this is just a board request, we're getting into other things at this time, but we'll come back maybe when we go into old business, Member Hudson, and maybe you can follow up with your question then, and or everyone else can follow up with statements then. So I just want to move on from this action item number 4, because we have a guest here tonight, and we want to give him ample time to present and then have a Q&A. Is that okay? All right, so but before I move on, our vice chair has joined us. So vice chair, any board request and then and just say hello so everyone can know you're online.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you again, Chair, and apologies for being slightly behind here. Technology sometimes. No, I think everything. I'm assuming you guys hear me okay. I think I see nods. Great. The only thing I would add, and I think Forrest might jump on this later, but in the same topic here about questions, the staff has been also very diligent in providing the outcomes for the last year, I think actually, but with specific, to the last quarter as well for outcomes um, for the ACC across also some other additional like data that they've collected and summarized for us. So I think that as it relates to questions that and I think we also spoke about this prior, this should be a part of, right? Like the questions that we come up with and the framework that we use. Not that this is the only thing, again, to Bishop's point, but a main thing. But that's it. Appreciate the time, Bishop.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Good to see you tonight. Good to see everyone tonight. The next thing on the item is the chair report. And I want to kind of echo what Vice Chair just mentioned in reference to the staff being very diligent in providing us with some of these reports that answers a lot and then gives us a lot to work with in the way of preparing questions and digging deeper. I just wanted to echo at that and say thank you again to both Forrest and Laura for being diligent in getting us that information. Very helpful. We'll probably get into what was just sent a little later on as the vice chair kind of leads that with some things. So I don't want to get specific in that area because we'll cover that a little later in the meeting. As far as the chair report, the Baltimore City PAT has requested and we have approved the schedule to meet with them on the 25th of this month, 25th of February at, I think it's 13:30. Is that 13:30? And forgive me, they did tell me where, they sent it in the email and everything. I just don't have it in front of me. So,
Sure, it's here.
I believe it'll be right here in this room.
yeah, because I know you sent it, and you told me where, you told me the floor, and I remember that, I just don't remember specifically where in it. But we're here, so we're here, I know
At
that.
1:30 p.m.? I'm sorry, 1:30 p.m.?
Yes, I'm sorry, 1:30. I said 13:30, but 1:30. Yes, 1:30 PM. And I know that they were asking for the chair and vice, but I think if everyone can make it, was it just, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, thank you. I want to be careful because we don't want it to be a quorum. So, thank you. So we don't want it to be a quorum. What I would do if it's just the vice and I, or if the vice can't make it, we'll choose someone else. And we'll just report back to the PAB as a subcommittee. Excuse me, as a ad hoc group. As a ad hoc, we will report back to the general PAB. And again, thank you for alerting me to that. We do not want it to become a quorum issue because we didn't announce it as such. And then it would be open to the public, and that's not what this is all about. All right, but we will report back. We received an email attached letter from the Advisory Commission on Policing regarding the Reimagining Public Safety dashboard and implementation of the MPAA. Came out directed to the chair, myself. I worked in our initial effort to begin a dive with the vice chair. So we worked together just to begin a dive. We called in, of course, our administrative director to kind of check on how we can kind of tighten our efforts, or as what did young people say, elevate our efforts into making sure that we address their questions about the dashboard in reference to the PAD. And we're going to hear from Forrest in a sec, and then if Vice Chair wants to follow up. But we before we share it with the board, I think what we are working on now is one, answering, because they're easy questions, but there seems to be a question in the view of how the ACP looks at the compliance of the PAD or not. And so we want to kind of bring a clearer view to what they should be seeing in reference to the expectation of the PAD is what we want to do. Forrest.
Yes, so the letter, which I think part of the chair's framing here, the letter that was provided is a draft. It's not. It's something that the ACP is working on. So they flagged it as not for public distribution. They just wanted input. The subject goes to when we say the dashboard, it's the Reimagining Public Safety dashboard on the county's website. And there's specific entries related to the MPAA. And for example, one of the items that seeking clarification on is there is the requirement that the administrative charge committee consists of 5 members, the chair of the Police Accountability Board or their designee, 2 civilian members appointed by the county executive, and 2 civilian members appointed by this body. Now that was marked as being of in an unclear status. So while the same requirement for the PAB is marked as having been completed. So we're going to be reaching out to just make sure that we know exactly what questions being asked and that there's not a miscommunication. So once we have a little bit more information, we'll report back.
Thank you. Thank you, Forrest, because, and that's all this is. Again, it wasn't open to the public, but what we want to continue to do at this point is make very clear to the best of our ability how we are fulfilling our mandate and what and how we respond to these concerns of what's being completed or what should be in process. So, which again is bringing me to this point as I segue into it, which is what I would like, as far as the chair's report, for us this year to just start off running into addressing the recommendations that we made, that we presented in our 2025 annual report. I want to kind of see how we can break off into ad hoc groups to kind of address these recommendations, find these questions, do these analysis, this research. And I would like, and as we spoke of at the first meeting on the 15th, and I think we all agreed, to do this, to make this effort and to put this action in motion. Can I say action in motion? An objective to have a piece of, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how to say it in a lawyer way, but a writing that presents, that leaves us with a piece of legislation or a recommendation of legislation so we can put up once we address a lot of these recommendations that we're recommending. Because as I said on the 15th, I think it's prudent, I believe it's prudent that we, at this point, and going into our 4th year as a PAB, work on now what? Here's our 2024, here's our 2025 annual report, now what? And so the now what is working off of these recommendations, creating it in a way where we're presenting it maybe to special counsel to look at it and draft it in a way of a presentation of a legislation to present to the council as can go up before the state legislature. That's all I have in the chair's report. Vice Chair, I know I mentioned your name, didn't want to put you on the spot, but did you want to do anything with the ACP? No? All right. What's next on the item? Again, we're moving kind of fast because we do have a guest. Came a good way. We need to give room to the staff report and to his presentation and Q&A. So the next action item is staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Byers, the monthly complaint report.
Yes, this is the monthly complaint report for January 2026. We received 4 complaints through the portal. 2 were defined as eligible by Montgomery County Department of Police and are currently under investigation. One is defined as eligible by the Rockville City Police Department and is currently under investigation. One was defined as eligible by the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office and is currently under investigation. Complaints received through other methods, we have 12. 4 were defined as eligible by the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office and are currently under investigation. 6 were received by the Montgomery County Department of Police and are eligible and under investigation. 1 was defined as eligible by the Rockville City Department of Police and is currently under investigation. And 1 was defined as eligible by the Gaithersburg Police Department and is currently under investigation. This concludes my report. I will turn it over to the administrative director to speak on staff report.
I'm sorry, just 6 per.
6 were received by Montgomery County Department of Police and are eligible and under investigation.
And what were the other 4? The 4.
4 4 came from Montgomery County Sheriff's Office and are under investigation.
Okay, I see.
1 Rockville and 1 Gaithersburg. They are all eligible and under investigation. This report will also be on the website. Administrative Director.
Thank you, Ms. Byers. All right, well, pull it up with a verbal review regarding trial board requests. We've received no new requests to appoint trial board members since the last meeting. However, the county, starting yesterday and going through today and through tomorrow, is having its first contested trial board. This is a Montgomery County Department of Police case. That is MPAA-MONT-01-26-01145. Easy place to find scheduling information is on the Montgomery County Internal Affairs Division page. That case is ongoing, had motions yesterday morning, testimony beginning and continuing through today. And to my understanding, testimony will continue tomorrow. Well, there have been, let's see, we're reminding the number of times that a trial board has been requested will be smaller than the number of times that a trial board is actually held. Several have been withdrawn over time. However, we still keep a record that we, call up a member, put them in the rotation, and that we had that interaction with the department, since it is a step beyond the officer either accepting or declining the discipline offered by the Administrative Charging Committee. Likewise, not all cases for which we appoint trial board members, or rather which the board appoints trial board members, not all of those cases are charged by this Administrative Charging Committee. Sometimes those are state Administrative Charging Committee cases. If it involves the Maryland National Capital Park Police. Likewise, you do, in fact, appoint civilian trial board members for cases charged by the department on its own volition against officers for misconduct not involving a member of the public. Let's see. As the chair had mentioned, there have been several bills in the General Assembly current session. The board has received emails about those, but to quickly recap, Senate Bill 202, Police Discipline Order to Show Cause. This bill would primarily affect the work of the attorneys prosecuting misconduct cases, like OCA or the city attorneys representing the municipal departments, trial boards, or on appeal. A similar bill was filed last year and did not make it to a second reading. The fiscal and policy note from last year took the position that it was unlikely that applications for show cause hearings would be in a significant number. So we'll see if that bill advances this year. Next, there is Senate Bill 303, Public Safety, Police Accountability, Investigation of Records Relating to Unfounded and Exonerated Complaints. This is another instance. A bill was filed, same bill was filed last year and did not make it to a second reading. This bill would require that certain investigation records relating to a complaint of misconduct committed by a police officer be removed from the officer's personnel record 3 years after an administrative charging committee issues a determination not to administratively charge the police officer in connection with the complaint of a trial board, or issues a finding of unfounded or exonerated in connection with the complaint. Finally, there is Senate Bill 746, Police Discipline, Municipal Law Enforcement Agencies, Suspension Pending Appeal of Trial Board Decisions. This would allow law enforcement agency chiefs to suspend a police officer without pay during the pendency of a trial board appeal, and it would also require that a suspended police officer receive back pay if the officer were vindicated in their appeal to the circuit court. This appears to be the first time that this bill has been proposed. Those are the bills that we've observed speaking directly to the MPAA. Next, just our monthly review of council expenses by the Police Accountability Program related to special counsel. So you can keep abreast of how you're deploying your resources. From the beginning of the fiscal year to present, the Administrative Charging Committee has expended $47,980.75. Meaning they have moment. $62,081.25 remaining.
That is from January 1 to
The fiscal year, so from
October,
from July.
July, okay.
The Police Accountability Board has expended $18,072, leaving $21,928 for the fiscal year. The board has received a copy by email of the requested summary of disciplinary outcomes relating specifically to MCPD to help you prepare for your meeting with the directors of that agency next month. Now, that report does include information about some other agencies for comparative purposes on certain charts. It follows essentially the same charts that you deployed in your annual report, extends them by 1 quarter, and also creates either single quarter slices or 1 year slices, depending on mostly depending on the malleability of the data set as it stands. Relatedly, for Q2 of this year, you can expect to see some changes in the viewer. Most of we've been making a lot of changes and upgrades behind the scene to reduce the amount of active maintenance that's required to keep that data flowing, particularly as demands for labor resources for both bodies increases. So we want to make sure that we're hitting all the bases we have to. There's also going to be a variety of changes to allow greater flexibility of querying and types of comparisons you can make, and to simplify its usage for when if you're trying to build your own chart from that viewer. It'll also convert a few existing references for readability. Currently, when you go in and to, for example, the allegation viewer, you can see a list of all the policies that officers who have alleged in each case, considered by the Administrative Charging Committee. The policy references themselves are currently written in format that's more machine readable than computer readable. It's created to be a quick reference for using the interim case management system. A human readable, more like Blue Book style of citation will show up for you starting next quarter. We received an update lastly from the translation office in Montgomery County. They are working on translating your annual report into Spanish. They did let us know that it's taking a little bit more time than they initially expected, so they have pushed that back to March 6th, 2026. I think we all appreciate their efforts. That they did take on this project, even though it does exceed the amount of content that they would normally translate for any given agency in a given publication. So we can look forward to seeing that next month. That concludes the staff report.
Any follow-up questions before we move on? Chair recognizes Mr. Wade.
Thank you very much. To staff, thank you very much for the detailed report. I really appreciate it. I do have a question, and this question is actually directed at council, if possible. As far as read off the pending legislation or upcoming legislation, I anticipate we have asked, and I did see that there are some people appealing to Montgomery County legislators regarding the fact that we don't necessarily see complaints that originate with a lot of the LEAs. My question is, as a member of a police accountability board, are we able to either testify before the state legislature, or what can we do, or what are our limitations in terms of what we can do to lobby for certain legislation as the one I just described?
Okay, well, let me get back. Can I answer that question at a later date? I will get back to you and give you a specific answer. Okay.
Thank you.
So we can give you the general requirements. What's the advice given to all boards, committees, and commissions? Anyone can exercise their individual rights to petition or testify before the Maryland General Assembly. For a board, committee, or commission to lobby as a group to the General Assembly, you do have to have specific authorizing language in your county statute. And even then, you do have to go through the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs for approval in that process. So if that ends up being something you would like to do, we can start working on that. But it is, but there are generally some requirements to get there.
Yeah, and then, because I was just hearing Martian with all that talk, so I'm gonna try the Earth talk. I think that individually, as individuals, and not on behalf of the PAB, you can testify to what you wanted. But if we agree as a PAB to make a motion and then vote on that motion on if we want to go through the process of meeting the requirements to prepare to testify as a board, then that would be a different thing, and that's something we would have to motion and then vote on to make it official, and then go through the process of with special counsel supporting us and making sure we're safe, and with the administrative staff making sure that whatever those requirements are met. So I just want to make sure that I think that should be a blanketed mindset of all board members, that whatever you do individually, you speak as an individual, and you don't want to get into the act of speaking on behalf of the board without a motion and or without the chair kind of leading that as chair, because that's what people would look to. So we want to kind of stay away from that. So.
Oh, and I want to say that we flagged this last time, and we briefly addressed last year. To the extent that so you've heard the bills that have been proposed this year so far related to the MPAA. Now, for the most part, like if you go and dive into those were prepared last year. Anything, it is beyond unlikely that the legislature will take up bills that is not already prepared this session. For the most part, if you want to, if you want something in the 2027 session, you'll want to have that fully drafted, briefed, and explained and ready to present by usually before September is when they want to give it to their 2026 for 27, so that they can give it to, because any bill that someone, even if someone provides them perfect language, they have to put it through their legislative drafters and go through a variety of proposal requirements. And then they only get 90 days to do all their work before they have to go home until next year. So it's It's an
Chuck,
outage.
was there a follow-up? Or was that, did I see your hand? No?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just for clarification purposes, I thank you for both of those aspects that I would be able to speak as an individual, not on behalf of the board. I guess the gray area that I am trying to get a handle on is that if I apply to speak and I go to introduce myself as Chuck Williams from Montgomery County, Maryland, and if I say also a member of the Montgomery County Police Accountability Board, you know, is that gray area is what I'm concerned with.
You would just omit that. You would just omit that part of your introduction. There's no need to really introduce yourself as and.
Just to show the rationale as to why I'm there appealing on a particular piece of legislation.
Understood, but because of legalities and what has to be and the way it has to be, it doesn't take anything away from the power and volume of your voice just to admit that part, I don't think. I mean, we can ask special counsel, but if not.
That's. You would be there on behalf of the PAB if you said I'm part of the PAB. Like, I think that omitting that would be what was appropriate in that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so I have two opinions. One, and certainly I agree with counsel, but the other point is that Chuck is trying to demonstrate his, not only his standing, but his gravitas on the issue. And it's like offering a resume. I know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that we have to skip over that obvious concern, but there would be a different weight to Chuck's or mine or whoever's presentation if recognized as a member of the PAB versus another very interested citizen. So, but I suggest we return to that. If you don't, may I, Chair, make a different comment that's related to this?
Yeah.
I think that in lieu of testimony, no offense, Chuck, I'd love to see you testify. It seems to me that one of the tasks that the board can take up is drafting a very sound and well thought out proposal for legislation that would carry the weight of testimony and have the board review it, vote on it, approve it with the help of council, and have it submitted for the next legislative session.
Right, and I think that's what one that we were talking about doing on the 15th was working at the
Exactly.
recommendation.
Okay, there you go.
And two, what Forrest just mentioned
Yes, sir.
about having something prepared by September 2026, which will allow us to be able to submit something in a timely manner for the
Agreed.
2027
Great.
legislature. So yes, exactly. I think we're heading in the right direction. I think that's what we're talking about. But I think based on council's affirmation and my concern, I think we can always omit if we're going up individually as a person to testify on anything. That way we won't get into the weeds of a report coming out that Montgomery County PAB says, and it was just an individual and it wasn't a motion, it wasn't a group decision, we want to kind of
Yes, sir.
stay away from that.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you for that report. I do want to make sure at least by 2000 hours that we have our guest up. So I do see that we have a member of the public present with us tonight. And I do see a name or two virtually. So I do want to quickly let this moment be, or did I jump the gun? No, I'm right. For public comment, and let me say that we're really, really strict with time tonight. So please don't take it personally. Usually, we have set a 90-second limit. Some people say that's not enough, but we have a lot on the platform. We have a guest here that is who has really, really fit us into his schedule, and we really need to hear what he has to present to us. It would move us forward in our agenda. So members of the public, both present and virtually, this is a space for you to make a comment and or question. And let me just preference that with, if you ask a question, we may not be able to answer your question tonight, but this meeting is recorded, which will then allow us to be able to go back and grab your question. And if we can find an answer that's legitimate and factual, it's a question that we can then post on the PAB's website for you to go out and to go on to and see again later. So let me preface it by that. So with that, the floor is open for public comment. Again, 90 seconds. If you go past that, please do not get offended if we have to kind of cut you off in respect to our guests tonight and our heavy agenda. We'll start first. I can't see anybody online. If there's any hand, any comments for public comment. All right, we have a Mr. Jeffrey Wart. Is that how I say that name? If all right.
Hey, good evening, sir. I'm actually here representing the fire department. I couldn't change my title, my name.
Oh, Jeff.
My apologies. I couldn't be there in person tonight.
Well, good to hear from you.
I have no comment. Thank you.
Outstanding. Good to hear from you, though, buddy. All right. Stay safe out there. We do have a guest in person tonight. Please, sir.
I stand here.
Oh, you're fine there, sir.
Wherever you,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Please.
Okay, great. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys graciously taking the time to allow me to speak. My name is Kurt Sloan, a 35-year member retired of the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, D.C. Having served the entire time with just a few very limited trial board here. Anyway, there are a few problems more pressing in any county or city than the rate of violent crime. On Sunday, March 22nd, there was a shooting at the County Social House located at 8110 Fenton Street, Silver Spring, Maryland. On April 6th, Montgomery County Police Department made an appeal for public assistance regarding the shooting at the County House. This was on April 6th, they made the public appeal. On April 8th, my confidential source viewed the video on Channel 5 News and along with the reward that was offered. The CI contacted me and provided the names of the two shooters. Thanks to valuable information from the CI, Detective Putman and Montgomery County, along with the assistance of myself and other MPD members, were able to close the case by April 25th of 2022 with the arrest of Nathaniel and Terrell Carr. Both subjects later pled guilty. The CI was the sole provider of the information that led to the resolution of the case. There were no other informants or citizens that contributed. I'm here to represent the confidential source. It is important to note that the confidential source who provided me crucial information in this case is not as fortunate as you or I at this table. It is also very important to note the citizen source provided this information at great personal risk. It is also easy to understand why the confidential source cannot be here tonight to speak. They were hopeful that they would receive the advertised reward as it would reflect their significant contribution. Unfortunately, the Montgomery County Police Department, not honoring their published reward, has undermined the trust in the department and law enforcement as a whole. We look disingenuous when we do that. The advertised reward of $10,000 was not provided. Montgomery County Police countered only offered $2,000 reward. This is underwhelming by today's standard. It is certainly not commensurate with the quality of information provided. Furthermore, the wording up to provides a built-in reason for unjustifiable downward departure without explanation.
Mr. Curtis, may I ask, Mr. Curtis, I'm sorry. Just because of time, and I just want to kind of understand as a pad, is there a question or statement directed toward the pad in reference to our purview in reference to this, or what is it? Because I'm trying
Police Accountability Board, they should be held accountable for paying their published award that's advertised across the DMV.
Roger that.
If I tell you 10,000, you don't want 2,000.
Well, okay, we thank you for that information. Again, we have a guest here. We are recording that. What I would always encourage, because we are here for the community and this is a community member that you're speaking on behalf of, if I'm tracking that correctly. I would encourage you to kind of, if you send an email, it's something that I believe we could forward up to the MCPD, is which I believe you're talking about.
Sure.
And be that mediator as far as, forwarding it up to them. But as far as our mandate or action, I'm not quite sure where we fall into that. Again, we just want to, again, make the community member know that we heard. But as far as what we can do, we can pass that up. And, as a point of again, bringing some type of solace to that citizen, that their voice will be heard. So we thank you for tonight. And we've, and that is a concern. So that's something we can pass up. And we just have to make sure that we can function within our legal mandate. But we do thank you for that.
Oh, I understand.
Thank you for that time.
Is there this email?
Yes, our staff members will make sure that you get the emails.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Definitely make sure you get the email before.
I appreciate it.
Thank you again. Thank you
I
again.
didn't know where else to turn.
No, thank you again.
No,
We just want to say, thank you because it's important that we hear from the
I got
public. Even if it's not something that we have, we can at least pass it up.
The word accountability struck to me. And
Yes, sir. I
I
believe
sent
it.
packages to every council member here and it's,
Thank you, sir.
it turned me off.
Okay, well, I hope we didn't get that from us, so thank you, sir.
No, I did not. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're gonna leave your contact information.
Sure.
or-
Let me do that.
Yep.
I appreciate you guys taking the time.
Yes, sir.
It means
Thank
a
you
lot
very
to me.
much. Thank you, sir.
With my business card. Yeah.
All right,
Yes.
so the next,
Have fun in there.
thank you, sir.
Do the same, sir.
Be safe out there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. There seems to be no other public member. We're going to move on because it is 19:59 hours. So we got to get Mr. Silver up and on. Chuck, is there something that you can wait or you need to hear before we get him? You want to respond to anything? I see your hand is up. You're muted. Can't hear you.
Sorry, I just wanted to piggyback on that last complaint. That I know for brevity, I'm not going to go into it now, but I request that we add that to next month's agenda.
What's that?
What the gentleman just raised as a complaint regarding the reward.
Good question.
Yeah, well, I think that was more of a question, and so what we want to be careful of is. One, we want to start with what I suggested, which is, get his information and we can pass it up to the right entities, or the right LEA. And not lead to the fact that we're suggesting that something isn't the way it was presented. So if there is a complaint, there are many things out there that entity or that LEA can get back to that individual and say, hey, if this is a complaint, here's where you need to go to make the complaint. You need to go to this or West website, MCPD, Rockville PD, whatever it is, make this complaint. Once they make it on their portal or wherever else, because there's an actual complaint, then it can go through the process of coming back to the PAB and then we're passing it up back to the LEA and however it comes. So we want to make sure that that process stays functional and that we adhere to that. So I think that's the best thing we just did first, to handle it that way, to give him that information. We got his information, who can pass it up to. So. Is there anybody want to follow up with that? Or do you see that I was kind of right with the suggestion before we move on?
Would that fall into, and I know I totally agree with everything you've said, Chair, but in the context of filing a complaint, would that be considered him filing a complaint with the PAB?
The way the laws read for us, right? Any complaint that is made by a citizen on any of the municipalities, LEAs, any complaint for whatever it is. That complaint, whether it's through the portal, PAB portal,
Mhm.
or whether it's through the LEA's website or in person or phone call or whatever that is. Once that complaint has been taken, let's say through another source, like we just heard our Laura says, we take that, it's deemed eligible for however it's eligible.
Okay,
The PAB has it,
that's on.
right, and then it, it goes before the LEA and their IA and their IA, and then it goes to a review of the
Okay.
ACC. That's the process.
Thank you. I withdraw. Thank you.
To add on that just to clarify for items delivered to, so anything that's filed through the Police Accountability Board portal does go to the noted department automatically. Contacting the office directly by email or telephone, we follow with a lot of leeway the definition for complaint provided in Montgomery County law. If an allegation does not allege any misconduct against a police officer, does not appear to describe a member of the public, or is a complaint about the conduct of police leadership, those are things that are outside of the MPAA. When we receive those, for example, when we've received complaints about a chief of police for whatever reason,
Right.
we don't forward those to the Internal Affairs Division. We do notify the department that we've received that, but it does, because it's outside the definition, it would not follow the same process if it takes that. Okay.
I think.
And that was my understanding, which Chuck, because as a member, I want to address your concern as far as that type of request, is because we want to make sure that we're not operating outside of what we've been commissioned to do as a PAB. Because let this phone. Yeah, because again, as far as articulating it, as I was trying to get it in that specific context, is if this person's complaint is actually against the agency itself and not a specific officer, or it's against the chief who represents the agency, which is probably what it be, that's outside our purview and mandate. So I didn't want to mislead him or whomever he was standing on behalf of. So I think the best thing to do at this time, which was only 90 seconds, which we kind of allowed him to go a little over, was, hey, let's first create an avenue of communication. Because we can't get it all here, but we don't want to mislead you in thinking, because I understand accountability. I understand that he read that definition in our name. But anyway, so I think we kind of passed that. At this time, unless there's anybody else want to follow up on that, I don't want to cut any member off because that's a real concern. And we want our public to know that we listened, but we are stipulated to function within the law and be compliant to what we've been created for. No other comment on that? At this time, what I would like to do is introduce again Mr. Wayne Silver, Executive Director of the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission. And we'd like to thank you for again joining us tonight and being patient, sitting here with us for an hour so far. We appreciate you. Thank you for your hard work at this time, sir. We'll turn it over to you. Reintroduce yourself.
Thank you, Chair. As I said earlier, I'm the Executive Director. And what I'd like to do is I would like to leave as much time as I can to answer any questions you have. Unfortunately, I don't get a chance to get out and talk to PABs that much. Although we are doing some stuff that I'm going to share with you that maybe will make it a little easier in the future. But I do want to share a couple things that are kind of in the works right now in the area of police reform that the commission is dealing with. The first is the Police Executive Research Forum is conducting another study. This will be their third in coordination with GOCAP, the governor's office on youth and crime prevention. And what they're kind of doing is they're building off all the other perf reports. And this perf report is focusing on two primary areas. The first one is the trial boards, specifically some of the issues and concerns with them, but also the cost of the trial boards. Anecdotally, what we're getting is that the trial boards are just very expensive, especially for very small departments. And there's a variety of reasons for that. One of them is that, an officer can, obviously, a trial board is much more detailed than a decision made by the administrative charging committee, but also because there is no summary punishment built into the system, whereas if you're just getting a letter of counsel or a letter of reprimand, you can still ask for a trial board. Okay, there are some jurisdictions who have hundreds of cases waiting for trial boards. You're not one of them. Okay. So they're starting that report, so they may reach out to some of your PAB members, and Forrest, I'm sure they've already reached out to you a little bit. If not, I'll get you their contact stuff. Because that is a big concern, and it should be a big concern, obviously, because your accountability board shares some of the weight of that cost. Some of the other things we're doing is when we initially started the training after we got the regulations written, we focused on what the law said we had to focus on, that being the administrative charging committees and also the trial boards. We got a lot of requests during that time to also train the police accountability boards. We just did not have the resources at that time to do it. It was impossible to do. Because this was an unfunded mandate. We had to use it with existing resources. And frankly, you're looking at the only staff of the Police Training and Standards Commission. Everyone else technically works for the Public Safety Education and Training Center or the Police and Corrections Training Commissions, because there's a lot of similarities between the two commissions. They perform our certifications, our audits, all those things that go across both commissions. So we had to put that on the back burner. What was interesting, because I believe it was the second perf report, they made a recommendation that we should try to train the PAB, and we had it in the works. So what we did last year is we started a voluntary program for police accountability board members to come be trained. It's a one-day training program. It basically goes over in detail the oversight of the PAB, the roles and functions of the PABs compared to the ACCs and the trial boards. Because one of the things we found across the state, and I do believe you did have a few members come, that we found across the state was there were some PABs who just did not know what their job was. They actually said, in some cases, they told us, ladies and gentlemen, that they thought they were joining the ACC and they weren't. Okay. So we kind of tried to work in the nuances because the PAB has a very important function. Okay. And, you have a very robust setup. There are some areas that do not. And they're just kind of like, well, we don't even know what we're supposed to meet on. And it's certainly not my commission's place to tell you what to meet on, but we just kind of give guidance to what the PAB does. We also answer any questions you may have about the other two sides of this issue of this is what the trial boards are responsible for. This is how they're supposed to operate. And this is the responsibilities of the ACCs. We've seen a couple issues where it hasn't been significant, but where it's almost there's been confrontation between the ACC and the PAB because frankly, they don't understand each other's roles. Okay. Because they are very unique differences between the two. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have for me on those roles tonight. But we're starting to do that, and we will probably, starting in the summertime, we'll start programming some of them for the PAB again. It's really difficult for us to do that while the General Assembly is in session because I spend a lot of time in Annapolis. But we're gonna try and do that again. Like I said, it's voluntary. And why is it voluntary? Because the law doesn't say you have to be trained. So it's voluntary for you to come. positions on a first come, first serve basis. There were a few times when we initially started the training where we did allow PAB members to come to the trial board training or the ACC training. We really had to pull back on that, and we had to pull back on it because it gets back to resources. We've got to save the spaces for ACC members, because what we're seeing now is a lot of the ACCs are starting to have turnover because their term limits are up and they're moving on, and other people are sliding in. So we've actually seen an uptick in the ACC request for training, and that's a 40-hour program. We actually had one county that they didn't use term limits, and all of a sudden they had no ACC. So, because some folks didn't want to come back. So we did try to help them to make sure they had a quorum so they could do their work. So you might see something like that. You're welcome. Now, we're not taking those programs on the road. We've been asked a few times to do it. We did the ACC training, trying to go to different regions in the state. And the reason why is because we don't know who's coming. Sykesville is pretty much centrally located for the most part. And, we have people coming from Southern Maryland, the Eastern Shore, Western Maryland. It's a nice little place in the center. Plus, frankly, it allows, there's usually about 3 of us who conduct the training. It allows 1 or 2 of us to sneak off and do other things while someone else is teaching. It's difficult to do that when we take it on the road. So we have that coming up. Some of the things that we have been dealing with lately is that when we first started training, and actually you kind of referenced it and using different terminology, but one of the things that the commission didn't think about when we did the initial training was the first thing that the administrative charging committee should do, and it sounds like you kind of do it behind the scenes, when you decide if it's eligible, is to determine if the ACC has jurisdiction over the case. Okay? Bless you. And I just want to give you the guidance that we're using. I have a feeling it's pretty similar to, if not exactly similar to what you're doing, but just so you know, in case you hear the term jurisdiction, because that's the word we use. All right. The first thing is that the individual has to be a police officer. Now, Maryland is a very unique state. Okay. And it actually makes it a little easier on us as a state. In Maryland, individuals are certified as a police officer by my commission in person and position. And what that means is that the moment they leave that department, whether it's they retire, they resign, whatever it may be, terminated, the moment they walk out the door, they are no longer a certified police officer in the state of Maryland. They are not authorized to enforce the general criminal laws of the state. All right. Why does that impact the ACC? Because the Public Safety Act says the ACC has jurisdiction over, they can administratively charge police officers. Once they walk out, they are no longer a police officer. So we get a lot of questions sometimes where people ask, well, but wait, shouldn't we still hear the case? No, you have no authority over that. Because here's how it ends up. And I also want to leave you with this. It's not ending. Okay. It's not like it just goes into the air and nobody knows what happened. I'll lay out some of the steps that happen behind the scenes that deal with my commission, that no one's getting a free pass here, ladies and gentlemen. I can assure you of that. All right. So that's the first part of jurisdiction. The other area where they would have to look at jurisdiction would be, have they met the time frame? And that just recently changed October 1st, 394 days. It's a little more nuanced than it used to be when it was just simply a year and a day. But you still got to make sure you meet that. And your counsel's there. She's not going to let you not meet that. Okay. That's the next one. And then the other part that you have to look at is, and we're finding that some ACCs and some PABs weren't looking at this, was, does it meet that definition of police misconduct? Because you can have a complaint that is a legitimate complaint from a citizen, but it doesn't reach to the level of police misconduct. Because It doesn't involve a constitutional violation, a violation of law, or an agency's policy. Okay? And there are a few, for example, if I just don't like the fact that the police officer gave me a citation instead of a warning, well, that doesn't rise to the level of misconduct on its own, on its own. Because the guidance we give departments is if you have to look at the complaint in the best possible light of the complainant. And if doing so, you still can identify any misconduct on the part of the officer. They just didn't like the outcome. Well, then it's not misconduct. So department, because what we found is that there were a few departments where in their attempt to be very transparent, they were giving cases to the ACC that the ACC should not hear. And what the ACC, same thing, wanting to be transparent, if they give me a case, I'm going to take it. They were hearing it. Well, now that leads to problems when we get to the trial boards, because the first motion that is made is the ACC had no jurisdiction over that case. They shouldn't have made a decision. So everyone thinks they're doing the right thing, but all they're really doing is setting it up to be dismissed by the trial board. All right. You have counsel, and the counsel's there to give you opinions on what they counsel on what you should do. And obviously you want to listen to that, but start asking those questions if you're not already. It sounds like you kind of are, just from listening to you talk. It sounds like you kind of are.
So Wayne, I think as a path right now, what I'm hearing is I want to kind of see how, from you sharing I guess the 30,000-foot view that the ACC should have in their functionality, as a path of us learning this of what that view should be. How would you translate that into assisting us with making sure as a path that not only are we understanding that view that the ACC should have, but how do we then use that knowledge and interaction and information and relationship to help further our research and finding trends, throughout.
That's good, Chris, because what we've seen happen with it, because our overall view of the PAB in a nutshell, and I'd love to take credit for this, but I can't, it came from my chair, is that the Police Accountability Board's primary responsibility is to look forward. To look at trends, look at the patterns of behavior, big ticket items. And make recommendations on those patterns that they're seeing, those trends. That's one of the reasons why the ACC has to provide you an overview of their cases, so you can see. The example I use is that, let's say that, and as far as I know, it's not happening, this is completely hypothetical. Let's say Montgomery County is getting a lot of complaints for excessive force, hypothetically. And let's say the results of the ACC's findings, let's say there were 20 cases. In 19 of those cases, they did not administratively charge the officer. Okay. One they did. One's bad, but it's better than if it was the opposite way. That doesn't mean that there's not something the PAB should look at, because then it should fall back on, why are we getting so many complaints about excessive force? Because it may not be misconduct, but it may be that, we've got to communicate better what we're doing, how we're doing it, those type of things. We see this a lot with the officer illegally arrested me, right? And that's because people the general public doesn't understand there's three types of encounters: consensual, investigative detention, and arrest. They think it's just either I can go walk or I'm arrested. So they make complaints. Well, that's a perfect example of maybe departments have to do a better job of explaining to people what they're doing when they're talking to this person. And because it's okay to say, you can't go, this is an investigative stop. All right. So that's a good example of what we're having. And that's where the PAB would fit into that. With the particular thing with the jurisdiction, what we've seen in a few jurisdictions is that because there's a misunderstanding of that jurisdiction on both sides, we've had PABs who felt that, you know, questioning why the ACC didn't hear a case, or questioning why a department didn't hear a case. Now, I think just from listening to you, I think you already have a process in place to do a lot of that. But there were a lot we had a few questions from PABs when we did the training, and even before that, it's why we covered it in the training because they felt that, you know, if they got the complaint through the portal, that automatically meant it went to the ACC, and that's not necessarily true, obviously, because it's not where the complaint comes from. It doesn't involve a member of the public. So we kind of added that to the training for the ACC members. First thing you do before you do anything is you should have a discussion. Do we have jurisdiction on this case? Okay.
I'm sorry, I want to also just let you know that you have view of the screen here, so if you see a hand and you're ready to call,
Gotcha.
you can.
Gotcha. So those are the type of things. So I would encourage you, the next time we do the PAB training, we publish it on our website. We send emails out. Forrest will send them to you, and Bishop will send them to you as well. The reason we don't send them to every member is because, frankly, there's a lot of turnaround in this all over the place. So half of them would be mailer game as it came back. So I would recommend that you pay attention to if you haven't read the first two perf reports, look at them, and also sign up for that training. I will tell you, this is the first time I had a chance to look at your in-year report. I'm only about a quarter of the way through it. I already tell you I like it. I like it. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be happy to stand by for any questions.
Vice Chair, see your hand, and then we'll go to Ms. Hudson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Silver. I appreciate your time this evening, pulling away from Annapolis, I suppose. My question, you mentioned briefly sort of the ACC and the cases of the ACC, generally, right? Not anything specific. Now, just to get to my question, a lot of what we see, to give you an example, are complaints along the lines of what we would call general unprofessional conduct. And you'll see once you read our report, we have used the PERF's methodology, and thank again our staff for taking that upon them as well. But in the cases like that, when we're talking about general unprofessional conduct, it can be very subjective. It can be any number of things. And so to me, I would agree with you wholeheartedly that information that we gather from the ACC will help us more concretely determine what the situation was and be able to better provide recommendations to LEAs as it relates to general unprofessional conduct. Here's my question, sorry, it was long-winded. What do you see as the role or the specifics of what the ACC could provide or should provide to the PABs in this case?
We went through with this with our Assistant Attorney General quite a bit, and here's the guidance we give. They have to give enough, or they should give enough specificity so that you can do your job. So these are the parameters we give them, while at the same time not giving away any personal information. All right. And how they give it is completely based on your system. There are some jurisdictions here, a lot of cases, and it's done through a spreadsheet because there's so many cases. Other ones, their ACC members come in and actually brief the PAB. Those are ones that only have like 5 or 6 cases a year. So you're probably somewhere in the middle. But here's the recommendation that we give based off of guidance from our Assistant Attorney General, is they have to give you the type of complaint, what the complaint was, okay, generically, because they don't want to go into details, for example, that it happened on February the 13th in this particular location, because now we're starting to single down to not just who the officer is, but also who the complainant is or the other people involved, because we want to protect their Yeah, anonymity as well, thank you. So the general overview of the case, in most cases, you already have that as a PAB because the case came into you, all right? The department that it came from, and I'll get back to that in a minute, department it came from, how many officers were involved, the nature of the complaint, and what their determination was, and findings. So, in other words, did they decide that, you know, it was I'll use Montgomery County because that's obviously your largest department. They received a complaint on an officer from Montgomery County for using inappropriate language. After reviewing the case, they found that the officer did use expletives or inappropriate language, however they want to use it, just be consistent. And the ACC determined to administratively charge the officer, and they recommended a category whatever they decided. Now, I will tell you, we kind of keep it bland like that because that kind of gives you the big picture of what's happening so you can see those patterns that are occurring, okay? We have had some jurisdictions, and there's one county, you can just go read their end of year report, there's the whole memo from me on it in the back, in their appendix of it, where the departments were not comfortable with them providing the name of the jurisdiction that the complaint was made against. They wanted that to be generic. And our position, as well as our AG, is that's not realistic, and that handicaps the PAB doing their job. Because your two biggest agencies here, I would venture to say, are probably Montgomery County Police and the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, okay? But they are very, very different in size between those two. So let's go back to those 20 use of force issues, the complaints that we had last year. If 18 of those complaints were against the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office and only 2 of them were against the police department, well, we have a significant problem at the sheriff's office, right? Because of the size of the department based on the number of complaints. And then if we also take into effect that, let's say you upheld out of those 18 complaints, 9 of them. Well, okay, now we know we've got a problem to deal with. So that's why it's important that the department's name is included in it. The problem that some departments had is that there are some jurisdictions who have very, very small departments. There's 155 police agencies in the state of Maryland, and there are a few that have 3 or 4 people. Okay. I just talked to a chief yesterday that has him and a part-time officer. All right. Their concern was, well, there's only 3 of us, and based off the nature of the complaint, everybody knows it was Wayne. Well, I'm sorry. That's the way it is, because you have to have the information to do your job. Okay, to do your job. So that's the level of specificity we have them share with the Police Accountability Board.
Alicia, you're next, and then you, Chuck.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Mr. Silver. So what I hear you saying is that it really would be helpful for us to receive some kind of summary of the ruling of the AC, not just the complaints themselves, but some kind of summary of the ruling of the decisions.
I would be careful with summary of the ruling, because once you get into the summary, now you're getting into the details of the case. And now you're making it possible where I can now identify who the victim was, who the complainant was, who the officer is. Usually it's
very generic, right? A generic.
Very generic of it was.
Right.
The complaint was for excessive force. The complaint was for traffic collision. The complaint was for name it. It could be anything, because if you get into too much specificity, it's not going to take long for someone to sit there to narrow it down, especially when we look at, like I said, we can't help the fact that some departments only have a few officers, but at the same time, we want to protect the anonymity of everybody at that point, because nothing has been finalized. Because remember, the ACC is making a recommendation on discipline. If the officer doesn't want it, doesn't accept the recommendation, they can request a trial board. So nothing's final yet. So I would be careful with how deep that summary went.
Yeah, not deep, generic, a very generic
Be generic,
overview
and what
of,
you could also do is you could develop this, you know, as much as you can, there's always gonna be one-offs, but develop just common terminology you use for summaries of the
Right.
reports, that this involved inappropriate language, you know, whatever it may be. So you kind of, because that'll give
right,
you a ballpark of what we're.
some kind of understanding of what went on. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
And then my final question was, I plan on attending the training, the MPSTC training, but are are any of those recorded?
No,
Yes.
we do not record them only
Okay.
because every, when we're in there, we tell everyone before we start, some listen better than others. And Bishop, you probably remember this from when you went through, is that we will not talk about actual cases. We just will not do it because this is an open forum. Everything we talk about is hypothetical. But it always happens, somebody wants to say, I had this case, and before we can stop them, they've told us about half the case, and everybody in the room knows who they're talking about. So that's one of the reasons we don't record them. We've also been asked if there's some way we could put a generic version online, and we're not doing, because we're updating it constantly based off the problems and the issues and the challenges that we're facing.
Thank you.
Chuck? Need you to unmute, my friend. Chuck, we missing that baritone. You gotta unmute us.
Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, Director Silver, thank you so much for being here. I don't want to put you on the spot, so I'm going to phrase this as a statement
Like I'm back
slash
in
question.
Annapolis.
Okay.
Okay.
Based on what you described vis-a-vis the training of PABs or lack thereof, it sounds like the legislation needs a little more meat in terms of structure and funding, and that would benefit not only Montgomery County PAB, but all of the other PABs throughout the state. It sounds like that's something that we should be speaking with our statewide legislators to see if something can be done along those lines. And again, I'm not putting you on the spot, but you can feel free to comment if you like. If you just want to stay neutral, I'll understand.
No, I will say, feel the General Assembly did an excellent job in this. And now, honestly, the commission does not take positions on any type of legislation. And even to do so, I would need permission from the governor's office to do so. I will tell you, I can say this, that if there was a bill, it would come with a fiscal note from us. Because every time we do any type of training, it's taking us away from some other responsibility. It truly is. And that's, and sir, Ms. Williams, that's also one of the reasons why we don't take this on the road anymore, because we were trying to do all of our day's work before we went to the training and then in the evening afterwards. So, it would come with a fiscal note, in order to meet that requirement.
Thank you.
What is your role? You mentioned that you spend a lot of time in Annapolis. What is your role in Annapolis?
Representing the commission.
In
When there's bills that impact, like currently there are 4 bills that would direct my commission to either write model policies or reports. We will also weigh in informally on bills involving Police Accountability Act from a position of usually for information that there's a second and third order effect of what you're about to do that may, or,
So you lobby. I mean,
no. Anything I do in Annapolis is with the governor's office's approval. We have a legislative officer, and other things, like yesterday I was there for my budget. You know,
so the 3 pieces of legislation that Forrest mentioned, do you, when that is introduced, do you have, what is the procedure? What is your process in reference to how it relate to, your position?
So what we do is, the commission is an independent commission that is for administrative purposes assigned to the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, okay? Which we're fortunate enough that we can use the resources, or lean on, I should say, the resources of their legislative representative, okay? So when the General Assembly's in session, I start every morning by looking at the bills that dropped last night. Because we have this subject, as far as those, because, you know, we have the subject matter expertise, because sometimes there might be a bill that on its surface doesn't appear that it impacts my commission, but it probably does. Either because it may have nothing to do with police reform. It may be that it indirectly affects our certification standards or our processes. But there are some that are the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission will write a policy on this. Like I said, we have 4 of them right now that I'm tracking. And in those cases, what I do is I work with the legislative representative and I highlight any ones. First of all, these are the ones we don't have an issue with. They're not us. These are ones that do mention us, but it's not a heavy lift. It's changing. We got to change a line in regulation. But then there are some where we're like, no, this is going to, especially if it's a ongoing report, this is going to impact us. So it's working with them, and what they do is they send us, and they do it to all government agencies, they send us a request for a fiscal impact note. And what we do is we fill that out saying, okay, we can take on this new role, but this is what it's going to cost for us to do it on an annual basis. Or in a lot of cases, it's like, no, we can do it. You're not really, it's kind of already fits in with what we're doing. And then once we do that, if it's significant enough, then our legislative representative goes to the governor's office and says, hey, can we do a little bit more? Can we have them testify? Can we have them meet with the delegate or the senator? Can we have them just write for information purposes? Just to, like I said, to kind of say, hey, we can do it, but you're changing this. But when you change this impacts us like this, and we're not able to do this anymore.
So how would, I'm sorry, I'm not going
Because we
to,
got to.
I'm sorry, just one more last question. How would, for like the example of the 3 that are out now, how would we know what your position is or what?
Those fiscal notes are open to the public.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, they're not done behind, they're once we write them, they're open to the public.
Thank you.
Great. I'm good. You good?
I do have one other thing quickly I want to, I mentioned it briefly. I want to just touch base briefly on when someone resigns, no longer being a police officer, that they're not getting a free pass. Okay? So the moment that, and let's say worst case scenario, they resign because they know it's going to be bad. Okay? Not criminal bad, but bad. Well, there's a couple things that are going to immediately kick in the moment they do it. The first one is that they are no longer certified. They cannot enforce the general criminal laws of the state of Maryland. The second one is that agency has 30 days to notify the commission that the person has left, and they have to submit us what is known as a notice of personnel action. Okay, that is a document that puts us on official notice that they have left, but it also has to tell us why. Now, you may have heard the term used that, well, or maybe it's happened in some of your vocations where you want Silver to, you're going to terminate me, but you want me to go quietly. So you decide, hey, if you resign, we'll just say that, you left for better opportunities. In Maryland, police officers cannot do that because the moment on that MPA, it will ask, did they just retire? Did they just resign? Did they resign in lieu of termination? Did they retire in lieu of termination? Did they leave with an open investigation? Okay. And to ensure that the quality of the information we get, there's a perjury statement on it. That the chief or the agency head or their designee has to sign that saying under penalty of perjury, the information we're providing is accurate to the best of our abilities. So that's part of it. The other thing that happens is, let's say they wait a little bit of time, they think the coast is clear and everything's died down, and I'm gonna go try and get a job in another department. The Public Safety Act requires that the hiring agency go look at the internal affairs file of every single department they have ever worked for. Now, if they're from out of state, it still applies. That doesn't mean they have to hop on a plane to California. They can do a couple things. They can contract it out to a private investigator to look at for them. Or what most of them do is they will go to a similar agency. For example, if they're a sheriff's office, they'll go to the sheriff's office there. Or if they're local, a lot of times they'll go to the state police there and say, can you go look at this file for me and provide me with a report? They have to do that. And then when they submit that application for certification, they'll also have a perjury statement that they have to sign, saying that they're giving us the information. So with those two documents, they kind of work as checks and balances, the initial one, because if the department that the individual left doesn't fill it out properly, okay, this one just did. And if this one didn't fill it out properly, well, this one did. What we also have in addition to that, and if they find anything in those files, they have to notify the commission what the information is, so we can use it to make a determination on whether we would certify. What we now have, what we've had, but we're being much more robust about it, is we have auditors who will go out. So if we have a situation where a department tells us that someone left with an open investigation, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. The person can have an open investigation for a lot of things. There's one agency that opened an investigation because the officer didn't turn in his hat when he resigned. Okay? If it doesn't seem to make sense, we will send our auditors out and we will look at the files ourselves. Now, on very few circumstances, myself or our director of certifications and audits, we can immediately turn down an application. We can just say, no, we're not. But that's something that is in the Public Safety Act. For example, if they've committed a felony or a misdemeanor where they faced up to a year in jail, the law says we can't certify you, so we won't. All other cases, and we talk about it, my director of certifications and audits, myself and my deputy director, and we say, you have to go in front of the full commission. And your chief or whoever wants to hire you as your chief has to come with you, and you've got to explain to these 20 folks why you feel that you should be hired, because for some reason the staff didn't think so. And or as I usually put it, there are unanswered questions. There are some agencies that the moment we send that letter, their policy is we are not going in front of the commission, and they shut it down immediately. And I will tell you, I'm very proud of my commission. My commission is made up of half civilian, pretty much, half law enforcement or public safety, someone from the Attorney General's office, the state's attorney, so forth. Half are appointed by the governor, the other half are based on their position, like the superintendent of the state police, those type of things. And I'm very proud of them because this is not a rubber stamp to go in front of my commission. I would say, well, I don't really want to give it a percentage, but a large percentage of them, that person has no chance of ever getting certified when they walk in there, because they're not, they believe people deserve a second chance, but some things it takes a while to overcome, and they're not going to certify them.
So what I heard you say, is this primarily to applicants that are from within the state? If an applicant comes from out of state into this state, does that LEA have the obligation to go to the out of state jurisdiction as such and then present it back to your?
Yes, they either have to physically go or they have to have a proxy do it for them.
Okay, and if for whatever reasons they do not go through that process and such an individual is hired anyway, and then that individual commits a crime in state as an officer, what does that do to the hiring authority?
Well, it doesn't. Well, we will refer them to the state's attorney for prosecution.
The hiring authority.
The hiring authority, the person who signed the form, because that's a perjury statement. Or we will coordinate with Maryland State Police to open up another investigation. what we also do, we have the ability, because that could be problematic, hiring folks from out of state.
And I asked that question because you may know of a case that I know of that happened on Eastern Shore about a year and a half ago. You know
That's
that?
why we have the perjury statement.
Thank you.
Okay, I know exactly what and it's not a secret. Yeah, that was a big case. That was a big case. What we also do is we also run a check of the National Decertification Index, which is a nationwide index that's run by the International Association of Directors of Law Enforcement Standards and Training, which I am a member of. I sit on a few of their boards, to see if any other state has decertified them.
Decertification.
Decertification. Now, every state's a little bit different on when they enter information, because there are some states where you can kind of outrun complaints because your certification is good for 3 years. So they keep going until they're caught up. So a lot of states have to hold decertification or revocation hearings, even when an individual is no longer a police officer. We do not have to do that because they can't do anything now. We'll take it up when they come back in. But we still check that. We put names in the decertification index if we actually have to do a revocation hearing. And we've had to do a few of them. Okay. Now, obviously not as many as other states, because most people would just resign when it gets to that. But we also put names in the decertification index that were certified, come back for recertification, and we refuse it. We put their names in the decertification index as well. Oh, and one other thing, and last but not least, if we still have concerns, I will reach out to my counterpart directly in that state. And I mean, they do it to me too, and they're like, hey, what do you got on this person? What's in their profile? Especially if the information doesn't quite seem to be matching, we'll reach out to them directly and say, what do you have?
I wanted, the question, with all of that you're saying, is still kind of bring it back to that jurisdiction in reference to the ACC.
Mhm.
And in tandem, whatever that information that the ACC, however they decided on whatever the case is, that's something again that now the pad within reasons and being respectful to privacy and all of that. So if a case goes up or was sent up from the IA to an ACC anywhere, and within that time, that specific officer or officers resign,
Mhm.
that agency not only has to report it to you, but is there some type of writing that says that agency now has to report that to IA and to the ACC? Because if that case comes before the ACC as a review,
There's nothing in law.
there's nothing in
There's
law.
nothing in the Public Safety Act to do that, but we do tell law enforcement agencies that, part of being good neighbors is communicating with the ACC and the PAB. And, you might want to just tell them, hey, here's the reason you're not getting this case, is because the officer resigned.
But
But it's not closing the case, it's just saying this is why I wouldn't, because they may still continue to investigate it depending on if there's a criminal element.
I want to create a hypothetical is what I'm saying,
Mhm.
right? So a case still is in the view of the ACC, right? It's
Let
on
me
the
clarify.
docket, right?
Okay, what do you mean by in view? That they know it's a case that's gonna come?
It's a case that has already come, let's say. a
Okay,
case
they've
already
got
come.
and the officer realized it and he's like, okay, I'm gonna resign
I'm
now.
going to resign,
Okay,
right?
Mhm.
But it's still something that was already in the hands of the ACC. It's already been passed down. We're already in that 394 day in the day
Mhm.
thing, whatever it is. We have to meet that. But I want to make sure I was tracking you correctly in what you said earlier about jurisdiction. And it's only on current certified
Mhm.
officers. If that officer resigns while that case is in purview or in review, I'll use that, in review of the ACC, the ACC got it, I'm resigning.
Mhm.
Are you saying that that ACC now says, okay, well, we got notification that this officer has resigned, so we should no longer review this case and can
Correct.
do a decision?
Correct, well, I use different terms. If the moment you sit down to deliberate on the case, you are not aware that the individual has resigned. In your mind, he's still a police officer, move forward. If, for example, let's say I'm a chief of an agency, I send you a case, and then an hour later I call you and say, hey, he just resigned. Pack it up, send it back, table it, because you have no jurisdiction.
Okay, and the reason why I wanted that is because, and then again, in tandem working with the pad, everything the ACC does, and we're having this, if you're having this workable relationship, that could be a part of, and a negative factor of our analysis, because if that case should not have been heard because there was a resignation and therefore no jurisdiction.
I would account for that case the same way I would account if you were looking at a case and let's say it went outside the time frame.
Okay.
And you say, okay, we received this case, your report to the PAB could be, we received this case, we tabled it because we didn't have jurisdiction because they missed the time frame. Now, if that happens a lot, the PAB should be asking, why are they missing the time frame? But we tabled it because the officer resigned.
Right, so that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
get to, so either way.
Or it may be,
Yeah.
We've had this happen a few times, we tabled it because it was a multi-jurisdiction agency and we didn't have authority for that.
So either way,
Yeah.
that's some type of something, so we can, as a pad, continue.
Yeah,
to
you
look
can
forward.
account for that
Right.
case, but you're accounting for it. The action by the ACC would be, we tabled it because.
I'll do that.
But, I just wanna make sure that you get the feel for, when the person says, to use your example, Bishop, that, oh, they got it now, I tried to get as many paychecks as I could, I'm leaving now. Because I don't want this, they're not walking away from anything, because we're gonna look at it, we're gonna look at that investigative file. We're not looking at what the ACC does. We're looking at, even if the case, and this happens a lot, where the ACC deliberates, makes a decision to administratively charge, and then the officer resigns and we take it up, we're still not gonna pay attention to anything the ACC did, because we're looking at it as fresh eyes de novo. And we're looking at behavior. What did the officer do? And we're judging them on that at that moment in time.
So one way to contextualize this in terms of the materials that you receive. You get, for every, not just for every case, but for every single alleged policy violation, you get the specific departmental policy, be that courtesy or response to resistance and use of force, the outcome, the category, the level, the discipline. In 4 cases of the in 4 allegations of the 501 for which this board has received records, the finding was ineligible for review, rather than administratively charged, exonerated, or unfounded. Ineligible for review is a jurisdictional question. It's whether or not the ACC at the time that it made the decision had any authority over the matter. Now, in each monthly complaint report read during your meetings, you hear references to eligible, ineligible. Those are pre-ACC determinations. Those are in the course of the investigation. The department has looked at this and determined, okay, this person has complained about, for example, we have in your complaint records, Anthony Fauci. Now, at no point has Anthony Fauci been a police officer in this jurisdiction, or as far as I'm aware, in any jurisdiction.
Would you like me to double check the certification?
Yeah, we should check something. So that does not result in an investigative file being forwarded to the ACC. And so that doesn't come to you, that doesn't come as a outcome record, as the materials you receive from the ACC, the summaries of disciplinary disciplinary matters considered by the ACC. If it makes it to the ACC and there's a jurisdictional question, you get a result from that. Now, another caveat about the data you receive, because it is capturing the ACC's performance. If an officer, if an opinion is issued and the officer resigns, that is not subsequently going to be changed in the data set to ineligible for review. It's capturing what the committee did, what opinion it issued.
Absolutely.
That would come up in, that would have to be located in a different kind of record. Likewise, if the Mr. Silver gave the example of, you're sitting down in deliberations and what you know at that time, if the officer has already resigned and just no one's had a chance to tell the ACC yet, the ACC will render an opinion as though it has jurisdiction. If it thinks, this is a police officer, this is in Montgomery County, this is involving a member of the public. So just some features of the data set as it relates to what you've heard here tonight.
That is good.
And have a look at it this way is when this first started, a lot of ACCs and departments were knowing the officer had resigned, were still hearing the cases or sending the cases because they wanted closure. There is no closure because once they leave the vocation of a police officer, they also have lost their ability to have a trial board. So it's just kind of hanging out there. But I will tell you anecdotally, most officers are not, I'm not seeing a lot of officers, and I think your data probably shows it. I'm not seeing a lot of officers resigning when the case gets to they're either resigning and it's unrelated to the complaint, or they're going to wait this out and see what happens and let it get further down the path before they make that decision.
I know, I just want to mention this before we move on, because I know staff wise and room wise, if I'm incorrect, please correct me. The time limit of being here is 1 minute, 9 o'clock. So with that said, I want to be respectful first of and appreciative and thankful of your time, Mr. Silver, but also respectful of not only the staff's time because they've been here all day, but also the board members' time and special counsel, because I know you all have put in a full day. If there's any closing remarks you want to make first, Mr. Silver?
No, I'd rather take a dozen phone calls before something happens than have to try and clean it up afterwards. Forrest and I talk occasionally, not, it's not, overbearing. So, those lines of communication will stay open. And if you have any additional questions or concerns, we're happy to weigh in whenever needed. Because if not, I'm probably going to have to deal with it down the road anyway. So I'm happy to do it now.
Well, again, we appreciate your time. Thank you for your time. Thank you, members, for your time. I want to say to you, Mr. Silver, I like old movies. And I was watching an old movie where the chairman of the board himself, Frank Sinatra, had Robin Williams on the stage. And Robin Williams was playing a character. And they said, Mr. Sinatra, can I shake your hand? And he said, sure. He shook his hand. He went into this character and he said, oh gosh. He said, Ellen May, sell my clothes. I'm going to heaven. So I wanted to say, when I heard you say that you kind of liked our annual report. So
yeah.
I wanted to say, Ellen May, sell my clothes. We're going to heaven.
And
so,
Bishop, I've been very critical of some
critical.
PABs.
Very critical. So that's why I wanted to say, sell our clothes. We have Ellen May, we're going to heaven. So thank you.
Chair, may I be excused?
Please, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Feel free to
thank
reach
you
out
very
to me.
much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Again. With that said, I would like to, because we have Mr. Parliamentarian, I see his hand is on his chin. We want to make sure we do this right. So I think we need to make a motion due to time constraint to table the rest of tonight's agenda. Mr. Parliamentarian, am I correct in that?
That would work.
All right, is there a motion to table to the rest of tonight's agenda?
I'll make a motion to table the remaining to be put on the agenda for March.
I'll second.
We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor? Say aye, raise your hand. Any nays? The ayes have it. Now after that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn this evening.
I'm sorry, before I make that motion, I need to, put that motion on hold because I do want to make sure the staff has the last word before we make the motion. Staff.
I apologize, Chair. I want to say that you already said it, but just so the final item with adjournment was the confirmation of the next meeting date. I think you said March 19th.
Did I say that wrong? Was it?
No, I just want to make sure that that it got announced because
Yeah, March 19th.
went in one ear or the other.
Yeah, and it was also indicated in the motion with tabling
Excellent.
the rest of tonight's agenda. So March 19th, again, March 19th will be our first quarterly meeting with hopefully the chief of MCPD.
Mhm.
But that's it, no other alibis or anything. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn this evening's meeting.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Good night, folks.
Thank you, everyone.
It has been a long one for me, man.
It'll get